Josh Team is out at Keller Williams, and normal life could be on the horizon in the Philadelphia area. Sarah and I talk about it next on Toole Time. I'm Tom Toole, she's Sarah Tymon, and we are back with some real estate news, maybe some normal life on the horizon here. Very exciting. Why don't we start with that? So there was some news that came out this week that the Philadelphia Phillies are in talks with the city about having people in the stands at games in a limited capacity. Westchester School District is going back to school, as well as Radnor, Marple Newtown's made a vote. So we're seeing normal life. Is this like really happening right now?
Could be possible.
So what do you think about all this?
Yeah, so for the Phillies game, or for fans being able to come in to watch the game, I think that does, it's outside, it's open, you've got a bit more space, so that could be a way to kind of safely start to get back into some activities. Obviously, they're going to have to follow whatever the state guidelines are that are set, so they wouldn't be able to break any rules there. But yeah, I think it will be that's kind of a good one to have people getting back out to in a nice like open air type of environment. So we'll have to see how that rolls out. I'm sure they're gonna do whatever they can to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, these teams have lost like tons of money. Like this has been a real problem, especially baseball, probably more so than the others, because they have that high operating cost. I mean, they have the biggest payrolls out of all the teams in a lot of cases. And I'm curious to see, like, are people going to be able to buy concessions? Like, how's that going to work? I know in other places, I mean, there was, 20,000 people at the Super Bowl a couple weeks ago down in Florida. So that's way more than the limited capacity they're talking about here. It looks safe. I mean, if you can go to a restaurant and sit outdoors, and, I mean, there's plenty of room to space out. So I think for morale, that's where it would probably help more than anything else, because people are just sick of staying inside. I mean, like, nice weather's coming, right? Like, we were just talking about this. People are sick of, like, being stuck inside. It's snowy. It's cold. I mean, it's been almost the year anniversary of 2 weeks to flatten the curve. So, hopefully this is a sign of things to come. What do you think about the school systems? This is probably the bigger story.
Okay, so for the school systems, I'm a little bit up in the air about it. I think at this point in the year, it would be, I understand wanting to get back in there. Certainly there are a million different negatives of people just being virtual and not being able to be in person. My fear would be that things are starting to improve, numbers are starting to get better, people are starting to get vaccinated. At this point in the year, would it make more sense to say, let's this year not do anything else and then just start in the fall? Is kind of like one take on it, but I certainly understand wanting to get back in there. I think it was saying that more students that have never failed before are now failing. Obviously, there's all types of issues with virtual learning. I think that there's a lot of people out there that want to get vaccinated. I think a lot of teachers want to get vaccinated. However, it hasn't happened yet. And if they're saying that, I guess if teachers aren't put on a higher priority list, would they fall into that category that potentially couldn't get it until June?
So what I've heard and what I've read, and this stuff changes like every day, and I think that's the problem with this whole thing, is that there's no specific guidelines. It's like all over the place, and someone changes their mind, and all of a sudden there's different guidelines. So I know there's a lot of pushback from teachers' unions in prioritizing some of the teachers, and it's usually like the noisy 10% that get a lot of this stuff. But I do agree with you in that I think that there's got to be a better plan here, and I think the bigger issue is that the vaccine rollout has still been so slow, right? I mean, you got the governor talking about, hey, we need to prioritize legalizing marijuana, which has some merits, but how about getting the vaccine distribution done first, right? I mean, that to me is such an important priority. From the standpoint of the schools, I mean, I really feel for some of these kids like that are failing right now. Like they're not doing as well as they normally did. There's a lot of emotional breakdowns that come along with this. And from what a lot of the CHOP doctors have said is that children at the younger ages aren't as much at risk of getting coronavirus as like some of the older kids. So to your point, to me, the priority needs to be like elementary schools and younger kids that really need to be there. I think it's a little easier to do virtual schooling when you're doing like high school physics or other things. But then at the same time, all the private schools have been in session. Mm-hmm. The Catholic schools have been in session, and I'm not hearing any like case counts up there either. So, to me, there's got to be like, hey, this is how we're going to do it, instead of every district has like their own plan.
Right.
I don't see how things differ from Westchester to Downingtown to Radnor to Lower Merion. I just don't see it happening. It's like when you can do stuff in Philadelphia, but then you cross the county line, and all of a sudden, okay, you can't do that here. Like, there's got to be some sort of uniform guidelines, and more importantly, prioritization around the vaccine. Like, that's what's got to happen in Pennsylvania right now, because it's a disaster.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, even if I think that absolutely makes sense that kids that are of the younger age that are less likely to, get the disease and more likely to benefit from in-person teaching and school, where exactly like you said. But for the teachers that are there, if they haven't been vaccinated, they could still be, at risk. I think it's hard because there isn't a right answer. And I think that there's a lot of everything's changing every day, and there's no set protocol of what's going on, so it creates a lot of confusion. And then on top of trying to handle what the teachers are trying to do to set up for their classrooms and their schools, if it's changing every day, then it adds another level of what's going on here and kind of wasting time planning things that might not happen, or it's hard.
Well, I agree with you, and I think a lot of restaurants went through that when they thought they would open up, and they hire staff, buy food, and then, oh, guess what? You guys can't open now. And that's wasted money. That's wasted resources that could be being spent here. So my view of this is really like a fail at the state level, right? Pennsylvania needs to come out and say, here's our guidelines, and here's how we're going to handle it, and we're going to prioritize vaccinating teachers based on this group, because every state is different right now. It's the whole thing is just there's no plan. There's no plan, and the problem is no one's taking accountability. No one's really jumping in and actually saying hey, I'm going to handle this. And I think that's the challenge with Pennsylvania is we get all these mixed messages. It's a lot of nonsense, and then you get people fighting all the time, and then you have different school districts open, adjacent school districts not. That doesn't make any sense to me. I think there's a lack of logic here that really is part of the problem.
Absolutely.
So hopefully this gets fixed. I don't really know. There's not a good answer here. This has been going on for what, 12 months now? It's literally coming up when we had to shut down here. So, I feel for these students. I'm a big proponent of getting them back in the classroom just because it looks like the science behind it. And I've seen it on I go to these I listen to these Zoom meetings. I'm one of those losers that listens to the school board Zoom meeting to see what's going on. And what we've heard happening. The safety protocols are pretty strict at these schools where they're wearing masks. On the bus, they have to sit a seat away from everybody unless it's a brother and sister or the same household. So they are being very safe. I have to there is no room for error, and the kids are kind of used to wearing masks now. So I think that's been that was another fear. Oh, my kid's never going to wear a mask. They're in second grade. That really hasn't happened.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
See how it goes. I don't know. Hopefully the government can get their act together. So in some news we can be a little more definitive about, Josh Team, president of Keller Williams since January of 2019, apparently there's a mutual parting of ways, and he's no longer with the company. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, so just last week was when they had their big company-wide meeting, and to kind of get everybody revved up and fill them in on what's going on for the year and what they have coming up. And he wasn't leaving any type of indication during that he was going anywhere. And then a week later, he's out the door.
He was actually featured prominently at the family reunion. It wasn't like he was just kind of there and you figured something was up. But he was right on the main stage with Gary Keller. So I find that part to be probably the most interesting thing about all this. So did he know this before the family reunion? That's my question for you.
Right, what
do you think?
I don't know. Can we go back and look at footage and see if we can see if he's giving off any vibes?
Might need a criminal investigator to do that.
Yeah, we gotta dig in and see what he's thinking. I don't know. I know your take on it, I think, was that maybe there was a little bit of hesitation giving up some power.
I just don't think Gary Keller's ever going to stop running this company. That's my view. And what he did, and I think you look at the move he made, because he's now the chairman over there, and they have all these separate arms of the company, which are still all the same, right? It's got mortgage, it's got title. Every real estate company, even the small brokerages, have mortgage and title, right? This is a normal thing. And I look at him, and Brad Inman came out with an article about this as well. Him and Dave Lininger, who's the chairman at RE/MAX. These are these old school real estate guys, and they're just not leaving the company. And you look at these other companies that are out there, and while Remax is publicly traded, obviously, and they have a different CEO and with Adam Contos, I just don't think these guys are ever going to leave. Like, I mean, there's something about that generation, and I look at my dad is very similar, right, around the same age.
Yeah,
he's still working here. He's in his 70s. Like, there's something about that generation that they will not stop. Like, they're just not going to stop. And I don't know if it's a power thing, but you come in and you're the president, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know the inner workings here, but I remember hearing this from another prominent CEO in the business that he hired a vice president, but the vice president didn't really know what his job was because the other guy was still there, and because they elevated someone to the title of president, and then he moved to CEO. And my view is very similar, that maybe Josh Team didn't like his role because he thought it'd be under the term president, but
he wasn't given any of the power of that,
or the responsibility, I mean, it's because being a president is very different than what he was doing before. And the guy they just they just elevated, what's his name here? It was in the statement. Hold on. So whoever the new president was, I can't think of his name here. That's not really the point. He was also elevated from the inside, right? So I just don't. And they had another CEO. They had for KWX, which is now the parent company. I just don't think it was what he signed up for, and probably didn't like it. That's my guess. And they probably, and when your heart's not in it, like I don't see Gary Keller being too okay with that either.
Right.
So I mean that's my view of this. So what do you think this means for the company? Like, do you think, are they going to change? Do you think anything's going to happen with them? Because they have claimed they've won the tech war and all this other stuff, which I don't think anyone's won the tech war for the record. But what do you think this means for Keller Williams?
Honestly, I don't think it means a ton. I think that they may internally promote someone else to this position, and I think that things will kind of continue moving the same way that they have been. We'll see what ends up happening, but I don't see it being some huge major shift.
I think the biggest news here is the announcement, and that's going to be it, right? Yeah. Like I just don't see this being a strategic change at all, and it sounds like a big thing. And I kind of look at this as did you ever follow like the Tonight Show with like Conan O'Brien and Jay Leno, like how Jay took the job back from him?
Yeah.
I think it's kind of the same thing, where like Jay wasn't going away, then they created this new show for him at 10 o'clock, which no one ever did.
Right.
And then he came back later and took it. And I think, it's just sometimes you're not set up to win. And to me, if you're going to promote somebody, give them the job, right? Like, don't handcuff them on what they can do. Let them do the work and let them make some mistakes or do it their way. And I just don't think that was happening here. That's my view.
Right. I agree with that.
So, interesting stuff this week. Some real estate news, Philadelphia news. That's what we got. Catch you guys next week. Thanks for watching.